Isaiah 25. Now tonight we're going to be, if you have your Bible, we're going to be jumping around in there a little bit tonight. We have 12 or 13 or 14 points. This sermon is not pointless. We have a lot of points. 14 of them. This is meant to encourage those that are down and out, meant to encourage those that need salvation, point the way of salvation, but also those that are, this is our third and final one. I think I began here in Mark, and I didn't write these sermons down in my Bible, and I could have, I should have. Immediately while he had spake, cometh Judas, one of the 12, and with him a great multitude. It was verse 43 through 46 of Mark 14 where we started. And then I went further, the arrest, and then still yet arresting him again, and going on with, can't even remember the names of the titles. They should. What was the first one? Oh, sedition. When sedition comes and you're in trouble. Yeah, what was the next one? Caught, convicted, and condemned. Now, tonight we're going to do victory. Just victory is not in the sermon. That's our title. There has to be a happy ending to this. Now, some of you, you're going about your life and everything seems fine. But rest assured, if you're a Christian, it's not a bed of roses, folks. Moses had rather suffer the affliction with the people of God than to have, than enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. All right, so there are those that enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. If you want to call the pleasures of sin 10 in this life here, you're going to pay the consequences for that. But if you're going to choose the way of God and the people of God, you're going to suffer affliction. And so just expect that. So this is meant to encourage those that have chosen Christ, going the way of Christ. And what I say in Sunday school, there's good, then bad, good, then bad, then comes good, then bad, and so on. So listen, if there's never any victories, that's pretty discouraging, isn't it? That you never have a victory. And it seems throughout this, Jesus is not going to have the victory. He's been caught, convicted, and now condemned to die. And so it began with sedition, and then this caught, convicted, and condemned, and now he's going to be rendered. Now tonight we have all M words, and of 14 points, I would have to say 10 of them all have M words in the verse itself. Okay, so Jesus is going to get the victory, and I want you to apply this to your personal life, that we are just a reflection of him and what has happened. If they hated me, remember Jesus said, if they hate you, remember they hated me first. And the reason that people hate you is because they hate Christ. And so as Jesus gets the victory, you too are going to have the victory. Now, in this case, he has victory over death. And we'll see that at the end. He gets the victory over the death and destroys the devil because of that. Because, and then the question would arise this, well, if Jesus is the firstborn from the dead, wait a minute. Who else rose from the dead? Lazarus did. I mean, you could argue. Yeah. The widow's son, the widow of Nain, her son. The Shulamite. Yeah. Is it Shulamite? Her son. I mean, you can pick out people who were raised from the dead. What's the difference between Jesus' raising from the dead and their raising from the dead? Those that were raised from the dead died again. Jesus never died again. Never ever died again. Those all died then a natural death later on. They wrote, yes, sir. Oh, Elijah, they touched Elijah's bones. He wrote, or Elisha.
Enoch, who was taken away.
He didn't die.
He didn't die.
He didn't die. So he wasn't raised from the dead.
I know, but...
I know you want to argue.
No.
Are you arguing?
No, not at all.
You're just throwing
he never died.
He never died. The one that touched the bones of, I believe, it's not Elijah, it's Elisha. And if you have a phone, turn it off. Yes, sir.
The other difference is they were all waiting to be dead by somebody. Christ raised himself.
Oh yeah, that's true. By the way, the Trinity raised Jesus from the dead. God hath raised him from the dead. The Holy Spirit raised Jesus from the dead, and Jesus raised himself from the dead. You can never separate the Trinity. And somebody else then raised those others from the dead. They did not raise themselves from the dead. Those are all legitimate questions. I mean, if you're walking along this Christian life, and you say, well, wait a minute, others came out of the grave alive. And what's the difference? And you should never hesitate to ask those questions. Sometimes it stumps the pastor. He's got to do more study. Got to look it up. Got to figure it out. And those are good, legitimate questions. So we want to get the victory, and you want to have victory in your life. Isaiah 25. We're going to begin there, and we'll begin at verse 8. Tonight we have all M words. This is a quote. He will, without looking at your center column reference, where is this found? He will swallow up death in victory, and the Lord will wipe away tears from off all faces, and the rebuke of his people shall he take away from off all the earth, for the Lord has spoken it. He will swallow up death in victory. That's where I got the word victory. So victory does appear. He does get the victory in this. In other words, they captured him, they arrested him, now they're going to kill him. But this is all, the tables are going to turn on the devil, and the devil is going to end up getting the victory. Where does he swallowed up death in victory? Where does that show up? Without looking at your center column reference. Go ahead, Catherine. No, not in Revelation, but you're in the New Testament. It's a quote out of the Old Testament. You find it in the New Testament. Anybody recall? 1 Corinthians chapter 15, you're right. If we look at the center column reference, verse 8, 1 Corinthians 15:54. 1 Corinthians 15:54. We don't have to go there. It's, in other words, Paul quotes it. When Paul was writing these letters, he is just hammering away quoting verses. Being a theologian, he had those the rolls, especially the parchments, and he was quoting verses like crazy. So let us begin on this trek of Jesus caught, convicted, and now he is condemned. Where is he going to go to finally be condemned? Where are they going to condemn him at? Where the dirty deed was going to be done. Where did they do the dirty deed? Don't worry about the arrest and the trial. That's already over. Arrest and trial is already over. Where did they do the dirty deed?
Calvary.
Calvary. And give me the M word for that. No, that is coming up, sister. If it's on Calvary, it's in, there you go. You have got it. Now we're going to hop and skip and jump around. Genesis chapter.
Yeah, but what did he say?
Genesis chapter. We're going for the sermon, not anything else. No, 22. Let's go to Genesis 22. We got plenty of time. We don't have to rush this. He goes to Mount Moriah.
Okay.
Where is The temple built. Mount Moriah. Where was the plague stayed when David bought the threshing floor? The instruments of it, sacrificed the oxen and at the threshing floor. Where was that? Mount Moriah, all in the same place. And where the plague, folks, there's a plague on the people of this world. And the plague is stayed or stopped, stopped on Mount Moriah where David makes that sacrifice. All right, so if you go to Genesis 22, we have all M words. In verses 1 and 2, Genesis 22, came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham and said unto him, Abraham, now tempting isn't the tempting of the devil, this is a test. Abraham, and he said, behold, here I am. And he said, take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, which represents Jesus Christ here, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I will tell thee of. And so he's condemned, he's caught, convicted, and condemned. And he, as you and I may feel, sometimes you are the center of attention. Jesus is, in the end here, the center of attention of the entire world. So he has to be lifted up on high, on a mount, in front of everybody else, for the whole world to see. As it says, as Hezekiah destroyed, it was called the piece of what? Hezekiah destroyed it in the end. It was called a piece of what? It was called a piece of brass. All right, so it was the serpent on the pole, which would represent Jesus Christ there, and they were to look and live. Look and live. You look upon the Lord, look and live. So Jesus is lifted, and our first M word is the mount. On the mount, on one of the mountains. And so Jesus is lifted up on one of those mountains, and it is Calvary is where he's lifted up. Folks, you would think God is interested in Capitol Hill. But God is interested in Calvary's Hill. All right, the issues of this world are not settled on Capitol Hill, which is in Washington, D.C. The problems of this life and this earth was settled on Calvary's Hill. Amen. And so anytime things are going on that's important, the devil wants to throw a distraction in there so that we keep our eyes off of Jesus and put him elsewhere. So our first one is on the mount. Now, as Jesus was lifted up on the mount, by the way, there were the two thieves. Let's see. And Abraham rose. Look at verse 3. And Abraham rose up. This is Genesis 22, verse 3. This is really a good sermon. And Abraham rose up early in the morning and saddled his ass and took two of his young men with him. So there you have the two thieves, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering. So there is the cross. He's taken the cross up, rose up, and went unto the place of which God had told him. When I say this is a good sermon, I'm not in reference to what I'm preaching right now. I'm referencing through here. All these types are in here. This is where it's at. Now, where was Jesus? Our second point. Where was Jesus amongst the three of them? He was where? He was in the midst. And it does not say the middle, but I'm going to use that as our M word, our second one. If we go to John, the Gospel of John 19, not only is he lifted up before the world on the mount, and it looks like curtains for him. It looks like it's all over. So if you go John 19, it looks pretty bleak. You go to John 19, verse 18, where the crucifixion takes place on the mount, on Mount Moriah. By the way, where is I know they debate this, they question it, they drag. What is it that they drag through Jerusalem periodically? They drag something through there. Is it a cornerstone or something? What do they drag through there once in a while?
Make a cross.
Yeshua HaMashiach. You know, when you get those Jewish programs on the radio, every once in a while they're dragging something through. They're waiting for the red heifer to start up the sacrifice again. The Muslims have the help me out. What is it? What do the Muslims have? The what?
The Imam.
The Imam? Well, not their leader. I'm talking about the temple. What do they call it? Oh, the mosque. The temple of... yeah, but what do they call it? I can't think of it right now.
Dome of the Rock.
The Dome of the Rock. That's it, the Dome of the Rock up there. And the claim is that that's the temple now. And so there's this big debate, and so the idea is that has to be dismantled somehow.
No, you just gotta go a couple hundred feet to the south or east or something like that.
I know they debate that they have to move a couple hundred feet this way or that to where the real mount is.
Yeah, the archaeologists have both uncovered it all.
And they say that underneath the caverns, because when they had conquered that, I think it's the 7 Days War, they went and did some excavating down there, then they relinquished the property back to whoever. The claim is still yet under there is the Ark of the Covenant. There's all kinds of interesting things. Now, are these things facts or could they be true? This could be true. So it's really an exciting thing. And so if you listen to some of those Jewish programs, that some of this stuff is still yet to come up here. Look at verse 18, John 19, verse 18. When they crucified him, the two other with him on either side, and Jesus, and our second word is the midst, or the middle. Jesus was in the middle. Not only is Jesus the main man on the mount, you know, they get him up there before the entire world. That's, by the way, that is the real estate that God is interested in. He's not interested in Washington, D.C., Moscow. He's not interested in any of that. He is interested in Jerusalem, and he's interested in that mount. And then, not only just the mount, but the man that was crucified in the middle. And so he's the main one that's up there of the three that's being crucified. And it points that out, that Jesus was in the midst. The man in the middle is the all-important man. All-important man. Now, before all this went down, it's our next letter is this. It's all about the what? Oh, well, it's all about the real estate. Well, the old saying. It's always about the what? Just follow the money. Just follow the money. Go to Luke chapter 22. It's all about the money. And so, you come up with all these M words that are found in the text and that surround our Lord. It's always about the money. Judas sold out for a little bit of cash. It's amazing what men will do for money. If you're about to lose everything you own after you worked all your, and I know you're tired. I took a nap today. And so, and even if I didn't take a nap, if I start preaching, I get up for that. But I did take a nap. I know you're tired. If you were about to lose everything, would you be kind of broke up? People will, yeah. And don't say that can't happen. People will go to great lengths to keep what they own. All the way to killing for it. Who was about to lose their racket that they had going? Were those Pharisees. They were about to lose the gravy train that they had in the great exchange about exchanging out these sheep for better sheep for sacrifices. They were skimming off the top. They want to get Jesus out of the way. So for a little bit of cash, Judas is going to sell out. So it's usually always, there's money connected with all this. Luke chapter 22, verse 5. Look, we'll begin at verse 4. 22:4. And he went his way and communed with the chief priests and captains, how he might betray him unto them. And they were glad and covenanted to give him money. How much money did they give him? I don't know why you're doing that here, right in front of me. You shouldn't be doing that. All right? You don't see me ever doing that. All right? What did they covenant? How many pieces of silver? 30 pieces of silver. 30 pieces. All right? How far does 30 pieces of silver go? Not too far. Right? Enough to buy a potter's field. You know, if you had the entire world, you know, what would you exchange that for? Right? You know, that's a good sermon too. The great exchange. You know, if you had the entire world, your soul is worth more than the entire world. So before Jesus was killed, they exchanged this, they had this agreement about this money. And after Jesus is killed, Matthew 28, go there. After Jesus is killed. Now you might say, you know, if we were to pace this out. Oh, I see. No. Before Jesus was killed, he comes back with that money. Before Jesus was killed, Judas was paid off. Who was paid off after Jesus was killed? The soldiers were paid off. I forget my own sermon. I'm thinking Judas is bringing the money back, which he did. He brought the money back. Judas is paid off with money, and after Jesus is killed, well, folks, it's all about the money. The soldiers are paid off.
And the families.
Pardon?
And their families.
And the what?
Families.
And the families?
The soldiers' families.
No, well, we're going to go there. Let's go there. Matthew 28, verse 12 and 15. Maybe in the families is in your version. I don't know. I don't know. I'm only kidding you, Sonny. Verse 12. When they were assembled with the elders and had taken counsel, I mean, they got this problem. That Jesus he's nowhere to be found. They gave large money unto the soldiers. Verse 15. So they took the money and did as they were taught. And this saying is commonly reported among the Jews until this day. Folks, he who has the money rules, right? He who owns the gold rules. But folks, in God's kingdom, it isn't like that. It isn't like that. Jesus basically would be considered a grandiose failure because he didn't have the money. But it's usually always about the money. Money is involved someplace. It looks like Jesus is really down and out here. There were those that followed Christ to the cross. The women, they followed him, and they were, give me another M word, they were weeping and mourning. There were those that came and mourned for him. You know, those that, you know, you may get, you're down and out, people sympathize with you, and then you may ask for prayer, you may be put on the prayer list, and we pray for your, whatever the problem is. And there are people that are going to mourn this. Luke chapter 23, chapter 23, verse 27. 23, verse 27. Hopefully you got the right verses. Now it does not say the word mourning, but that's what it means here. And there followed him a great company of people and of women, which also bewailed and lamented him. And there were people that were sympathetic towards this. And they were in mourning for this. Mourning. But there were also others, give me another M word, which is in the text here. We're going to go to Mark 15. those that went along and they were, the soldiers did what? The mocking. Not only were there those that were supportive of Jesus, I mean, it was all over. We lose. They were mourning probably not only for him, but for themselves. Yet there's others that they think they have the victory here, and they are mocking him. Mark 15, verses 29 through 31. If you go to the Gospel of Mark, chapter 15, 29 through 31. And they that passed by railed on him, wagging their heads, saying, Ah, thou that destroyest the temple and buildest it in 3 days, save thyself and come down from the cross. Likewise also the chief priests, mocking, said among themselves and with the scribes, he saved others, himself he cannot save. He couldn't do that. He was there to save the world, you know. The mocking that took place, the soldiers, and previous to that, it says, verse 20, and when they had mocked him, they took off the purple from him and put his own clothes on him and led him out to crucify him. The mocking, people that are making fun, deriding him, making him look foolish as much as they could, mocking him. He's the loser. The loser, the mocking. Now, when all this is going on in your life, I know of a preacher that he would, if things are going bad like this, he would tell me, well, I couldn't even move. I laid down on the couch. I just had to lay down on the couch. Trying to encourage you not to lay down on the couch. If you go home and lay down on the couch, right now, if you went home and you lay down on the couch all week long, because, oh, woe is me, what happens? What happens to the dishes in the sink? They pile up. What happens to the business that you run? It goes south. What happens to your job if you're working? The boss calls you and says, you're fired. What happens to, if you're babysitting, what happens to them? They have no caregiver. What happens? There are people that do that, though. They can't even function. Did Jesus function through all this? Let's remember this. As bad as it got, Jesus still went about business as usual. As it got, you still have to get out of bed. You still have to make breakfast. You still have to go to work. You still need to do your daily routine, even though this is going on in your life. And so give me an M word of what Jesus took care of business while he was on the cross. He made sure there was a certain person that was cared for. The mother. He made sure business was going to be taken care of, not forgotten. I remember one time my wife, let's go to John 19. John chapter 19. One time my wife, she was fast asleep. I haven't brought this up in a while. We only had the one child. At that time we only had Tammy. And she woke up in the middle of the night just hysterical, beside herself. I forgot to take care of the baby. I forgot to take care of the baby. And she was running, and she got Tammy out of the crib, got her up, and Tammy was like what's going on here? Tammy was out cold. She was out sleeping away, but she thought she didn't take care of the baby. She was having a nightmare, right? So people need to stick with their duties. So Jesus took care of his mother. He didn't let that slip. So when all of this is still going on in your life, remember, you still have duties to do. And as Jesus did his duties, you and I, no matter how bad it gets, we have our duties to perform. God will get you through that. verses 26 and 27. When Jesus there, just John 19, when Jesus therefore saw his mother and the disciples standing by whom he loved, he saith unto his mother, Woman, behold thy son. Then saith he to the disciples, Behold thy mother. And from that hour that disciple took her unto his own home. Now we know he said other things while on the cross, but I just wanted to show you that he took care of his daily routine and daily business. He was, you say, well, you don't see him doing that other times. Well, this is it, folks. He's checking out. And he makes sure that his mother is cared for. And so he does and takes care of business at hand. So it was the mother. What other business did he take care of at hand? There were two thieves that were on the cross, and they both cast the same curses in the teeth of Jesus. It says that. But to the one, he extended what M word? The mercy. He extended mercy. That was his business, by the way. Your business is cutting grass. Some other person here's business is running a machine. Another person is running a computer. Other people are watching children. Other people are doing other things. One's doing demo work and so on. You have other business to be concerned with. But Jesus' business, the business at hand for him, was extending mercy. And he had the power to do that, by the way. To extend mercy to others. So that was the business at hand. And let's wake up back there. And he was not going to let that slide. He was going to... And if you do what the business is at hand, what's ongoing, which is bad, you tend to forget that. It helps pass the time and by the way, who's going to take care of the problem in your life? The Holy Spirit will let him take care of it. So you don't have to sack out on the couch and say, woe is me. Go about your daily routine. The mercy. Luke chapter 23. Go back there. Verses 42 and 43. Now, we're only halfway done, so we got to get moving here. So he took care of business, the mercy. And he said unto Jesus, Lord, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom. I mean, he doesn't repent. I mean, I don't see that. Maybe you could read that into the text, I don't know. But he doesn't make this great prayer. By the way, does he pray? Yeah, he's speaking to the Lord. Is that a prayer? Yes. He's talking to the Lord. When you pray, you're talking to the Lord. He is praying to the Lord. Lord, remember me when thou comest in thy kingdom. So he is lifting up the prayer. All right? And Jesus said unto him, Verily I say unto thee, today shalt thou be with me in paradise. Not paradise there. That paradise down there. The place called paradise because he took captivity captive. Right? When he came out of that grave. So you have the mercy. These are the things that Jesus did. But what did they do to Jesus? What crime did they commit then against Jesus? That's our next M word. The Bible calls it murder. The murder. Acts chapter 7. Acts chapter 7. Notice all of these M words, the bulk of them, are found in the text. Acts 7, verse 52. I mean, how bad can it get? I mean, how many times can you die? There is a movie out there. It says, I died 1,000 times. Jack Palance, from 1951 to 48. Whenever it is. I died 1,000 times. Folks, you can only die once. Or you can have the second death and go to the lake of fire. But they murdered Jesus. And it's called murder. Acts 7, verse 52. Which of the prophets have not your fathers persecuted? And they have slain them which showed before the coming of the just one, which is Jesus, of whom ye have been now the betrayers and murderers. They murdered Jesus. They murdered him. After a person dies, our next M word. After they die, a person dies, what's generally the first thing you do? Assuming they didn't die in a nursing home, they died at your house. My father-in-law died at my house. I saw him take his last breath. What was the very first thing we did? We didn't call, we may have called a relative or two. What was the first thing we did after we called your brother and your sister? What was the first thing we did? We called the funeral director of what the arrangements were. And then what did they do? They came out, took the body. They take it there. I think the doctor that's assigned has to examine the body. They pronounce them dead, and then they put on the death certificate how they died. I know what my dad, on his, I think he died of kidney failures, is what they said. That was ultimately how he died. And does the doctor know? I don't know. But that's how my father had died. My father-in-law, I don't even know what they put on the death certificate, Mrs. But when you go to the funeral parlor, usually you have, what is it that you have at the M word, about 3 or 4 days later? Okay, a memory, it's a memorial service, right? You have some kind of a memorial service. And what is the hope that you have at this memorial service? Do you hope that a lot of people come? Family, friends, acquaintances. People look at those that where very few people come, they view that as, oh, what a loser. How many came to Jesus' funeral?
3.
Pardon?
3.
Who came? Joseph of
Peter.
Arimathea or?
Peter, James, and
Pardon?
Peter, James, John, and
No, they took off. We don't know where John was. We're not sure. Nicodemus came. Joseph of Arimathea took him down, and probably some women. And they take him to that tomb. Nobody showed. What a failure. Matthew 27. Usually it's the funeral of a derelict, the funeral of a hobo, and by the way, who's responsible for that?
The homeless?
Yeah, the homeless.
The county.
The civic authorities, the county, the city, some civic authority takes care of those burials. They probably put them in a cheap pine box. Now, what kind of a crate they put them in and they bury them. And it is a sad occasion. Folks, I've been to a funeral that I conducted. The funeral director didn't even show. I think we had 3 people there. It's sad. Matthew 27, verses 55 through 61. And many women were there beholding far off, which followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering unto him. Among which was Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's children. When the even was come, there came a rich man of Arimathea, named Joseph, who also himself was Jesus' disciple. He went to Pilate, begged the body of Jesus. And Pilate commanded the body to be delivered. When Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn out of the rocks. And he rolled a great stone to the door of the sepulchre and departed. And there was Mary Magdalene and the other Mary sitting over against the sepulchre. Now, according to this, the great multitude of women before that may have left. You only have these 2 women. We know Joseph of Arimathea was there, and we know Nicodemus was there. So we have this memorial service. No words spoken over him. Placed in the tomb. It's a pretty sad affair. But joy comes when? Our next M word. In the morning. Not the morning of sadness, like you're in mourning, but the morning when the sun comes up. All right? So the tables are going to turn. So when it looks, go to Luke 24. So when it looks bleak, it looks dark, it looks like you will and cannot be the winner. Whether you're saved here, and you're saved, you're trusting Jesus, you're saved. Whether it be in this life or the next life, you're the winner. In Luke 24, verse 1, now upon the first day of the week, very early in the morning, the victory here, Jesus came out, when we preach that Jesus came out at 6 o'clock at night, Saturday night. They come unto the sepulchre, bringing the spices which they had prepared, and certain others with them. They come expecting to embalm Jesus, and they don't know how the stone's going to get rolled back, but they came in the morning. Folks, there is going to be, the sun is going to come up again tomorrow. And you will have the victory. All is not lost, folks. The morning, and the tables will turn. Verses 7 and 8. And so what do we call his rising from the dead? Give me an M word for that. It's a what? A miracle. It's like, how can this happen? Everything turned around in my favor. It's a miracle. The miracle. That we are relinquished from this problem and it's gone. The miracle. Verses 7 and 8. Saying, the Son of Man must be delivered in the hands of sinful men, be crucified, and the third day rise again. And they remembered his words. The miracle took place. Jesus came out of a grave alive. The Bible calls it, there's like 10 of them in the Bible. It is, give me an M word for what the gospel is. The death, burial, and resurrection is called a what? You are right. The mystery. Nobody could make this up. Listen, DiCaprio, what's that other producer for the Silent Heirs? Cecil B. DeMille. Cecil B. DeMille, whatever. He was silent films, probably went all the way through the 50s. He was around a long time. They can't invent this story up. Hollywood cannot invent it. They can portray it. They can show it, but only God can invent this. This is a mystery. It's not sleight of hand. You know how when a magician does this, it seems mysterious how it's done. But only Jesus could do this. And it is called a mystery. Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians chapter 6. What did I say this morning about it? It is his strange work. All right, this doesn't enter somebody that's writing a novel, and they have some kind of a pipe dream, and they write something down. This is something that only God could invent. It's a mystery. In verse 19, Ephesians 6, verse 19, and for me that utterance may be given unto me, that I may open my mouth boldly to make known the mystery of the gospel. It's a mysterious thing, folks. He died, he was buried, and he's coming out of that grave alive again. Amen? It's a mystery. And he does it, give me an M word, for power. Strength. There was a mouse named this. Oh, Mighty Mouse. Right. He does it with the might that only God can have. In Hebrews chapter 2. How does he do this? Listen, you got a problem in your life? It looks like the tables will never turn. By the power of God, he can turn the tables. He can turn the tables. The might of God. Verses 14 and 15 of Hebrews chapter 2. For as much then as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, he also himself likewise took part of the same, that through death he might destroy him that had the power of death, that is the devil. So the devil has the power of death to keep Jesus down there. But Jesus overcame that. How? By the power of God, because he is God. And that's how he destroyed the devil. And delivered them who through fear of death were all their lifetime subject to bondage. He does it with the might of God. In the same chapter, our last point. What is, if we were to take the count, we're going to take the count of all those that trust him. Our call, give me the M word for that.
Multitude.
The multitude. I'm not going to use the word multitude. I know. We'll use the M word that's in the text. But that's actually what we're driving. That's the end. Hebrews chapter 2, verse 10. Hebrews 2, verse 10. For it became him for whom are all things, and by whom are all things, in bringing what? Many sons unto glory, to make the captain of their salvation perfect through suffering. Many sons. The many. We are part of the many that have come to the knowledge of our loving Savior. So that ends it. What was the first one? Sedition. Sedition. When sedition arises and it looks like there's no winning for you. You are caught, you are convicted, and you are condemned. And then tonight, you would like to get the victory. And it's still, halfway through the sermon, it still looks like it is curtains for Jesus. But remember this. He still functioned on a daily basis of what his duties were. And God saw him through this, and he rose from the dead. And as that story turned around, he can turn your story around. Shake hands before leaving.